Good afternoon, folks. This is Mike Killian from Mvix. Good morning, depending on where you're calling in from. Right now, we're looking about 1:59 Eastern time, so we're going to give this just a few minutes before we actually kick off today. Certainly appreciate everyone joining, and hang tight for just a moment or two. Feel free to record this if you would like. We'll also be giving out recorded versions of this if anyone needs it. So feel free to do what you need to do, and we'll talk about Q&A and housekeeping here in just a minute. But thanks for joining and for your patience, and we'll be getting started here shortly. All right, folks, thanks for your patience. We wanted to give everyone a few extra minutes for those that might be coming in late from another meeting or appointment to join us today. So quick thank you to everyone on today's audience, whether you're watching live or whether you're tuning in later on to the recorded version of this. But we certainly appreciate everyone's time. We know end of the year gets a little hectic, and thanks for carving out a few minutes to talk to the Mvix team and the SimplyNUC team. And we hope you leave today's webinar with a lot of good takeaways about digital signage as a technology, where our industry is headed in 2022, and hopefully some best practices on how to research and implement this technology, especially if you're new to it for your organization or for your business. Quick stat here, as you can see on the screen, dynamic displays nowadays are really the name of the game for most digital signage rollouts. So if your audience is customers, obviously it gives you a chance to capture their attention and keep their attention while you market or put other content up to drive certain behaviors. If your audience is internal employees, everyone has a lot going on during their workday, so dynamic content, visual, motion, visual graphics, animations, those types of moving pictures, scrolling text, those types of dynamic content elements are really the way to grab employees' attention as well, especially with everything they have going on. So one of the many messages you'll take away from today is that looking ahead to 2022, dynamic content is really where you want to be for most audiences, and it's really going to capture the most attention for you, in some cases up to 400% more than static content does. So we have on the Mvix SimplyNUC team, we have a ton of white papers on best practices for creating content, for deploying content. So for any more specific content recommendations, feel free to reach out to our teams. But just a good start for you today and kind of an overview of where we're headed. So my name is Mike, and Mike Killian. I'm with Mvix, and today's webinar is with our valued partner SimplyNUC. We're going to dig a little bit into increasing consumer mind space with digital signage, and more specifically with adaptive digital signage. In a little bit, we'll get into this whole concept of adaptive signage and kind of what that means, especially looking ahead to 2022. But that's our goal today, and luckily we have the SimplyNUC team here to help land some important takeaways for you. So thanks again for joining. A couple of housekeeping items for today. From an audio perspective, feel free to join the webinar via internet. You can do it via your web browser if you have the app. You can also call in via phone. You should see on your webinar invite that there's a phone line as well, so feel free to use the best audio selection for your situation. If you're not hearing anything, please make sure that audio is not muted. If you have a microphone, please make sure that it is muted. However, all attendees should be in a listen-only mode, so don't get frustrated if you're yelling and we can't hear you. You are locked from speaking with us. Of course, feel free to disconnect or then reconnect if you're having any issues, and you will be able to grab a recorded version of this webinar after if you missed it or had to tune out or had a technical issue. So in regards to asking questions today, we want as many questions as you have. We will take some time at the end to address as many questions as we can get to before our hour is up. Please feel free to ask any and all questions that you have. There is a question tool within the GoToWebinar question pane that you're logged into. So technical questions will be hopefully answered immediately. We do have some moderators here standing by to help you with any housekeeping related or technical related issues in terms of joining or hearing the webinar. In regards to questions about the content of today's webinar, we'll be answering those at the end. We do have a Q&A segment at the end. And again, we'll get to as many questions as we can. Any questions that we did not have an opportunity to address, you'll have some contact info for the Mvix team and for the SimplyNUC team. So we encourage you to reach out with those questions. You'll get that contact info a little bit later. We look forward to hopefully an informative session today. So as I mentioned earlier, folks, my name is Mike Killian. I'm the Vice President of Client Relations at Mvix Digital Signage. I've been with Mvix for just under 9 years at this point. It's been an awesome ride. I've been in the audio video industry for over a decade. I started out as an integrator myself and have had a lot of experience around the hardware side of digital signage, obviously the software side, which is what Mvix specializes in our content management software. I'm very pleasantly surprised today to be teaming up with John Green from SimplyNUC. SimplyNUC is one of our most valued partners here at Mvix. We rely on SimplyNUC for media player endpoints and media player devices for our clients' digital signage rollouts. And John, I'll let you introduce yourself and maybe give a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Mike. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. It's a pleasure to have the privilege to explain to you how SimplyNUC and Mvix can enable really dynamic digital signage and help you capture your market audience. I'm a product manager here at SimplyNUC, and I come from a hardware background in semiconductors and recently joined the SimplyNUC team to help them continue their tremendous growth they've seen since their founding in 2015. For anyone who isn't aware of SimplyNUC and what we do, we are an expert in mini computers, and we really specialize in creating custom solutions specifically tailored to meet our customers' needs for their specific applications. So we're always willing to adapt our solutions and create new ideas to enable the best solutions for you. And I think between the Mvix solution and our hardware component, we really do have a unique solution that provides very powerful digital signage. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, John. I appreciate the intro there. So, folks, a little kind of roadmap here for where we're going to head today. We're going to talk a little bit about adaptive digital signage and what that means for your organization. We're going to spend some time today on target audience because I think it's important to understand your audience. You're implementing this technology presumably to drive certain behaviors, and part of driving behaviors is understanding your audience so that you can maximize that audience dwell time on your digital signage and get the most out of this campaign that you can. We're going to talk about mini PCs, specifically the SimplyNUC solution and some of the aspects of SimplyNUC's product line that make them one of the best media players in the industry, and also how mini PC component relates to this concept of adaptive digital signage. You'll get a chance to hear from John a little bit later on. If you haven't heard of SimplyNUC or if you haven't worked with their products in the past, I encourage you to spend some time on their website. Either during today's presentation or after when you have a few minutes, but a lot of great aspects of the SimplyNUC product line, and really excited to hear from John later on. We'll do a quick recap, and then our goal is to have some time for Q&A at the end. Again, we'll try and address as many questions as we can, so please feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation today in the chat window, and we'll be happy to touch on those later on. So let's get right into it, folks. What is digital signage? Let's start with that before we get into the whole adaptive concept. And digital signage, as you may know, is a series of visual communication tools. And the goal is to convey messaging in a digital format to a certain audience, presumably for the goal of eliciting behaviors from that certain audience. So some organizations use digital signage for an external audience, so maybe your customers or perhaps your students if you're in the EDU space. Perhaps your passersby, you're looking to drive foot traffic into your facility. Some folks use digital signage for an internal target audience where you're focused on your internal employees, maybe trying to drive good safety habits or best practices for interacting with customers, maybe some internal morale components for new hires or folks that are getting promoted, that type of thing. So the target audience can vary, but the concept here is using this tool to create digital campaigns that inform people, engage people, and ultimately, hopefully, drive some behaviors if you're doing it right. So digital signage has three components or three aspects to it. The first aspect is the hardware side of things, and the hardware consists of the physical screen. This can be an individual display. It can be a group of displays together, commonly known as a video wall. Sometimes this technology is used in a touchscreen environment, in a kiosk, for instance, in a mall for wayfinding. But the hardware side of things usually consists of the screen itself and then a small media player component that goes behind the screen. And this is where we partner with SimplyNUC to deliver an all-inclusive solution, which you can deploy in the field as needed to each instance that you want to have a screen at. So the player typically goes behind the screen. You can mount it how you want. It's connected to your network. It is a networked solution. And the players communicate with our software, which is cloud-based. So the Mvix CMS is the interface where you will log in. You'll do it remotely. You can do it from your laptop. You can do it from your tablet. And you'll interact with the CMS to manage content and send content out to your screens based on your target audience and the behaviors that you're looking to elicit. The screens are obviously important. That's what people see. If it's a touchscreen solution, that's what people interact with. However, the media player has a very prominent role in this. It has to be capable enough to process information, especially dynamic content. A lot of times you'll find that you're splitting up the screen with videos, with scrolling text, maybe some social media components where there's a lot of different dynamic aspects to the content. So you want a good workhorse media player that can actually help render back different content on the screen, especially when dynamic content is involved. The software side of things, which is where we specialize, is also a very important component. You want a software where there's a lot of pre-built features, pre-built integrations, and something that's easy to use. We ideally want to see you spending time ideating on content and tracking your content success more so than doing routine workflows like scheduling content or uploading files. We want to automate as much of that as possible for you so you can spend your time making this a successful campaign versus actually interacting with the software itself. But arguably the most important aspect of a digital signage campaign, folks, is the content itself. So in regards to your audience, obviously the first step is identifying who you're looking at and who you're working with and who you're trying to elicit behaviors from. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that here in just a moment. But from a content perspective, I mean, that's what your audience is going to see. That's what's going to make or break any getting their attention. It's going to make or break what we call dwell time, which is how long you have that attention on the screen. It's going to determine if their attention is directed towards content that has an impact on behavior, and ultimately it's going to impact the outcome of this deployment for your organization. Are you getting the behaviors that you want out of your audience? Are you getting that dwell time? Are you getting interaction with your brand or interaction with your school or interaction with your staff? And so that's the end goal, and content is arguably the biggest driver for eliciting those behaviors from your audience. Now, in regards to adaptive technology, what we mean by this in today's industry is we mean the ability to change content to appeal to a wide range of audience or a changing audience or an audience that may be captive or an audience that may not be captive. For instance, a lot of our retail deployments, you have an audience that's walking by the store and hasn't gone in it and maybe is walking quickly. Sometimes you have to compete with other technologies to get people's attention. For instance, our clients that we work with at a university level, most students are obviously walking around campus these days with their head in their phones, and you're competing with their personal cell phone for their attention. So this whole concept of adaptive digital signage has to do with changing the messaging, changing how you're reaching your audience, changing how you're getting their attention, and ultimately changing what behaviors and influencing the behaviors that you're trying to get out of your audience. So when you think about digital signage, the Mvix team encourages you not to think of it as a set and forget type solution. It's something that should be changed. It should be adapted as time goes on. And if that's your approach to it, and if you're keeping content up to date and you're keeping content unique and fresh and attention getting, you would expect to see some significant success and ultimately some significant ROI out of this type of technology. So that's our concept behind adaptive digital signage, whether you're new to this technology or you're just revamping your infrastructure. So a couple things that make this adaptive concept a little bit closer to home. The first thing is, how easy is it to update? So one of the things we look at here at Mvix is empowering you as a user of a content management software with the ability to make updates to your content easily and the ability to make updates to your content in a remote fashion. So where possible, we want to, as you work through your day, if you're a marketing professional or an HR professional, or maybe an ops manager on a production floor, presumably you have some ideas as the day comes and goes. You might think of a new workflow that you want to impact, or a new behavior that you want to drive from customers or from employees, or just a new message that you feel like customers or internal stakeholders aren't exposed to that much. And so as those ideas come to mind, as you innovate surrounding your business and how to reach your audience, we want to make the process of translating those ideas to digital signage content and ultimately behaviors. We want to make those easy. We want to make that process quick, and we want to make it remote so that you can do it on the fly. So to do that, we've obviously built some tools in our CMS which allow you to update content quickly. A lot of that, those workflows happen automatically these days through integration. So for instance, if you're a marketing professional, you're probably familiar with Canva. Our CMS has an integration with Canva where you can actually bring in content from your Canva account so that you don't have to make content twice or revamp content that you already know and love. So API-based integrations are a great example of updating content easily from programs you're already working in, programs that you already know and love. And then the whole remote component of it too, especially if you have a couple hundred screens or a couple thousand screens. Obviously you want to be able to granularly or on a broad scale send content to those screens in a way that's going to reach that specific audience. If it's a specific bank branch or a group of branches perhaps, if you're a restaurant chain and you have micro marketing that you're doing or micro price changes, we want you to be able to do that at the restaurant level or the district level or whatever the case is. So the concept here is that as you innovate in other areas of your business, we want you to translate that easily, quickly, and remotely while you're on the go to your digital signage campaign, to your digital signage content, and ultimately to your audience. And that's part of this whole adaptive concept, is being able to do it remotely and being able to do it on the fly. As part of an adaptive digital signage solution, obviously you're going to have media players, you're going to have screens that support this type of rapid content updating, remote content updating, and of course are reliable. And this is one reason we partner with SimplyNUC, is we look at the reliability of the hardware, we look at the long-term innovation pipeline that SimplyNUC has set up to be a reliable endpoint for us and for our customers in getting this content out quickly. And without a good solid piece of hardware behind your screen, basically all you have is a screen at that point in time. So hopefully that sheds some light for you on this whole concept of adaptive digital signage. I know we have some folks on today's webinar that maybe are new to digital signage as a concept. In many industries, digital signage has taken foothold 5 years ago, 7 years ago. You may or may not be an organization that's familiar with cloud technology at this point or comfortable with cloud technology, but digital signage in 2022 and looking ahead will be prevalent in most industries, at least in North America, in Europe, in Australia, et cetera. And so you're going to start to see more and more of this technology in the field. And if it's something that you're considering for your organization, if you haven't leveraged this technology before, there's a few core benefits that I think permeate almost every industry in regards to using this technology. And the first is recall rate. When we talk about recall rate, we're looking at how much does an audience, whether an audience member, whether it's an internal or an external stakeholder, how much do they remember the messaging that they saw in front of them. Now, when you look at cell phone based ads, for instance, or social media based ads, or you look at even old school printed ads that you might find in a lobby somewhere, the recall rate on those types of advertising campaigns and informational campaigns vary. However, it's generally regarded that the digital signage recall rate is 83% or upwards, which is significantly higher than traditional methods of marketing to your customers or marketing to your internal employees. So right off the bat, what you tend to find with digital signage when implemented correctly is that your audience base and your stakeholders walk away with a higher recollection rate, a higher recall rate of the content you're showing them versus other methods of advertising or employee messaging or things like that. So that's the first benefit to consider with this technology. In regards to brand awareness, we have found, and our industry has found, that digital signage has an almost 50% effectiveness rate in regards to brand awareness. So other traditional methods of advertising and informing your audience may have some blurry components to them, for lack of a better word, when it comes to translating your brand, getting customers or employees engaged with your brand. But digital signage has one of the highest effectiveness rates of any delivery medium for branding related content. And when combined with the recall rate, you can be assured that your audience is walking away with the correct impression of your brand, and your audience is walking away with a higher memory of their impression of your brand, both of which are obviously very powerful tools. If you're using digital signage correctly, going back to our concept of dynamic content and our concept of adaptive content, you're probably using motion-based content in some form. It might be as simple as a scrolling text sticker or an HTML-based weather app that has radar and animation. Whatever the content is that you're using, if it is dynamic, if you're using it correctly to get in front of your audience, you're going to find that the view rate of digital signage versus other traditional mediums goes as high as 4x what you're used to in other delivery methods. So you can get some serious attention with digital signage if you're displaying the content correctly and if you're targeting your audience correctly. At this point in Q4 of 2021, our industry has ascertained that at least 5 out of 10 communications professionals, so at least 50% of communications pros, use digital signage as a channel. We're really excited to see where that number heads in 2022 and beyond. Obviously, our projection has that significantly upwards of 50% next year. So we're excited to see as this technology grows and evolves in the market. But as of today, at least half of all communications pros are using this technology. So a lot of good resources out there. If you're new to digital signage, there's a lot of good learning experiences and best practices you can pick up from folks that have used this technology for a couple of years. No need to reinvent the wheel for your organization. I would say focus your time and energy more on understanding your audience and trying to drive to and speak to certain behaviors from your audience. So let's talk about your audience for a minute. And what I've done here is try to relay some general tips for you, whether you're working with an internal audience, meaning your employees and stakeholders, or whether you're working with an external audience, meaning your customers or your student body or passersby, your real estate office, or whatever the case may be. So whether your audience is internal or external, the tips we're going to talk about here briefly should start you in the right direction, especially if you're newer to digital signage and to this technology. So the first thing about your audience is knowing what they want to see. A lot of times this centers around demographic of the audience, specifically in regards to age, specifically in regards to technology proclivity. What does the folks that are walking by your screens, what do they want to see? For example, if you're working in a manufacturing facility, maybe you're an operations manager and you're looking to drive some behaviors out of your employees, put yourself in your employee's shoes in this example and think about what is it that will get their attention when they're on their lunch break after 4 hours of hard labor? What is it that's going to get their attention when they've been around maybe heavy machinery all day, for instance? What is it that they want to see and that will stop them in their tracks and actually cause them to look, think, and dwell on that messaging for a moment? If you're a university, let's say, or even a K through 12 educational environment, very likely your audience, your students, are engaged with a wide range of digital technologies, their cell phones, their tablets, obviously laptops for homeworks and assignments. So what is it that's going to get their attention more so than the content that they have access to readily on their phone or on their laptop or whatever the case may be? So what is it that will cause them to stop for a moment? If you're in a retail environment, whether that's food service, consumer goods environment for shopping purposes, whatever the case is, why did viewers come there? Why did your audience come to your store? Or maybe if they're not at your store, but you're trying to get them into your store or your restaurant, why are they walking by? Why are they in that physical area? And what is going to cause them to stop, hit the brakes and say, you know what, this is a pretty cool piece of content. This looks like a cool brand. Let me step foot inside. So obviously we on the Mvix team, we can help you with that. We have a team of consulting professionals here, which can, based on your audience and your business, help you ascertain what it is that these folks are looking for and what they want to see and what's going to get their attention. But I think this is one of the most important questions you can ask yourself, whether you're new to digital signage or whether you're revamping your rollout. What is it that's going to get your audience's attention? Part of that is, of course, not just the content itself, but where you place your displays. We find a lot of times for employee-based communication, it's in areas where there's high dwell time and not necessarily a huge amount of active foot traffic. So, hallways might work, for instance, but also break rooms are a great area to place them, or perhaps a lobby entrance where all employees come in and out to sign in and out. If you're in a retail environment, you want to place these displays in high foot traffic areas where you're going to get the most looks or the most set of eyes on the display. If you're in an educational environment, you want to place them obviously where they're easy to see, especially if it's a touchscreen. If you're doing wayfinding, for instance, you want to place it in an area where minimal effort to find it and students are going to see it right off the bat or see it when they're in a main traffic flow area. So just some common things to think about there. I've mentioned a couple times this concept of dwell time. Dwell time is how long the audience's attention is typically on the screen. Part of increasing dwell time is putting displays in what we call common pause areas. These are areas where just due to the layout of the facility or the flow of foot traffic or other logistical aspects of the organization, people have a tendency to physically dwell in those areas. So if you find some of those areas, usually it's a really good spot to start, at least in thinking about where you're going to put your displays. Think about distance when you're designing your content. Especially as your content strategy changes over time, which it should. For instance, if you're a restaurant and you're expecting customers to read off of your menu and order off of your menu, you probably don't want that 20 feet away from the counter they're ordering from. If you are looking to help folks find their way throughout a facility and you've implemented a touchscreen kiosk, you probably don't want them walking hundreds of feet or hundreds of yards to go get to that kiosk. It kind of disincentivizes them from using it to begin with, for instance, right? So think about how far your audience is going to be from these. And if you tie that into your common pause areas and some other aspects of your logistics, you're usually in pretty good shape. Last thing I'll leave you with is visual competition. In today's world, there are tons and tons of stimuli, as we all know. Some of those stimuli come from outside, whether it's lighting, whether it's sound, whether it's physical traffic from vehicles or foot traffic, for instance. Sometimes the visual competition comes from within. It could be a device that the person's carrying. It could be that they just got off an 8-hour shift and they're not operating at 100% awareness capacity like they would be in the morning. So the point is, think about, in terms of where you put your displays and your content strategy over time and how it changes, think about the visual competition that your audience may have as they interact with your displays or choose to look the opposite direction. So food for thought there. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to the Mvix Solutions consultant team. One aspect of digital signage looking ahead to 2022 and moving forward is you're going to see a lot of buildings where the placement of displays is part of the design and the aesthetic of the physical environment from day one. We do a lot of work, for instance, with engineers and architects where maybe there's a remodel happening or even a ground up build, and digital signage nowadays is being spec'd in as part of the environment so that it blends in. It creates a feeling of tech savviness for the brand or proclivity for forward thinking and innovation within the brand. So where screens are placed and how they're built into the physical environment is a very important component of designing your digital signage rollout as you look ahead in the future. One of the most commonly used forms of communication in today's world is obviously social media. When you're selecting a digital signage content strategy and when you're selecting a content management software like the Mvix CMS, think about how social media impacts your brand and think about how you can best and most easily translate your social media content to your screens. Also think about how much content should come from your brand's social media accounts versus how much should come from your followers and your engagers, other third-party influencers, for instance, and make sure you're working with a vendor that can help you filter out or eliminate perhaps not so positive PR and focus on some of the more positive aspects of your branding in your social media and how hard you've worked to cultivate that brand for your organization. News is obviously a great attention getter still. News comes in all shapes, sizes, forms, and there's a lot of ways to get dynamic news content out there. We like to see news as a rule on a lot of employee-facing communications, for instance, because it's somewhat neutral. It gets people's attention because they're probably familiar with it, whether or not they agree with and follow the news outlet that you've put on the screen. At least it's something neutral. You're not asking for a commitment from them right away by looking at the screen. You're not asking for a call to action or anything like that. You're just offering a piece of dynamic content that they can relate to and they're familiar with in some capacity. And usually that's a great visual icebreaker, a great way to get people's attention on the screen. Animation is obviously a powerful tool if you don't have access to branded videos or suitable third-party videos for your displays. Think about animation. We always put an asterisk on this at the Mvix Design Studio, which is that you can have too much animation. So think about not overdoing it per se. Think about having a fair amount of animation to get people's attention, but don't let that animation compete with the core messaging that you're getting out and the core behaviors that you're trying to drive. So just a couple tips for you. At Mvix, we have over 200 pre-built integrations as part of our CMS. So these are just some examples of content that are dynamic and adaptive that you can work with. But again, please contact one of our consultants if you want to learn a little bit more about content for your brand that'll engage your audience, because we have a ton of integrations to help you get up and running easily and quickly there. We've talked a little bit about apps, obviously. When it comes to marketing, if you're a marketing pro and your audience is your external customers, a lot of tools we can bring in, we can help you work with to bring in your existing web content. We've talked about Canva, we've talked about social media, for instance. QR codes are actually making a comeback in popularity now because you can have someone scan the screen and interact with it versus physically touching it. Also gives you an additional touch point as your audience leaves your facility. They now have brand related content on their phone leaving with them, which is exciting. If your audience is your internal employees, we have a ton of pre-built integrations to help out. For instance, if you're a Microsoft house, we were the first vendor to have an API-based Power BI integration. So a few clicks and you have access to all of your data on your displays, or I should say all the data that you want to show on your displays, because you can restrict some of that obviously, but really quick, easy ways to bring in your content with just a few clicks. And remember, you can authorize and lock down some of this too. If you have a team of users helping support your digital signage content, a CMS like ours is going to allow you to restrict what folks can work with and not work with. So we encourage you to think about how this content strategy is going to evolve over time, how it's going to continue to evolve for your audience, and how you're going to continue to reach your audience, especially if you've had these screens in place for a while and maybe you're trying to keep it relevant. Also consider scheduling, folks, obviously with all types of foot traffic, whether it's internal or external stakeholders. Location, we've talked about how it plays a role, but so does time throughout the day. The mindset people are in the morning when they come into your bank branch might be a little different than if they're on their lunch break or in the afternoon. Obviously, the mindset when someone stops by a retail location on their day off on a Saturday at noon is a little bit of a different mindset than when they run on their lunch break to get a last minute holiday gift or Christmas gift, right? So think about the time of day that you're catering to as part of this adaptive technique and this adaptive campaign. And we encourage you to change your messaging, change your content during various times of the days to account for the mindset that your audience is in as well. So that's it from my side of things at the moment. Obviously, I'll jump in a little bit later on for some Q&A. What I'd like to do at this point is open the floor to John to talk to you a little bit more about some of the aspects of the SimplyNUC product line, what the SimplyNUC team does, why they do it so well, why we choose them as a premier Mvix partner. So John, the floor's all yours. Looking forward to what you have to say.
Awesome, thank you, Mike. Mike did a great job at explaining how impactful digital signage can be in creating the recall rate, increasing the recall rate, and really captivating your audience to hit the target messaging when they need it at the specific times and to hit the correct demographics of your audience. And another thing he touched on is how fast the market is actually growing for digital signage, and it is just expanding. And one of the reasons why it's expanding is because of the capability that mini PCs bring to the market. So mini PCs are these very small form factor PCs. We have two of them displayed on the screen that belong to our Oak Long Life Mini family. And they're both in a 4-inch by 4-inch package and weigh only 1.5 pounds. So this makes it very flexible in terms of your system integration, putting them behind screens, or even embedding them into full digital signages that might be somewhere in, say, a mall or other convenient locations. And so they do have flexible mounting options. There's 2 different mounting options that are provided with these units, whether the base mount or the DIN rail mount. So you do have a lot of that flexibility in terms of your final form factor and creating a very complex, compact design for your digital signage. Because there's so many different application and use cases for digital signage, the SimplyNUC team wanted to make sure we properly powered the Mvix software and wanted to provide actually 2 different hardware solutions to enable the most cost-effective solution for your specific application. The first product in our offering with our solution from Mvix is the Red Oak. The Red Oak is an AMD-based Ryzen R1102G with Radeon Vega 3 graphics SoC. And so this is really great for the applications where you have 1 to 2 monitors and you're really content heavy. So meaning something where you're in a cafe, hotel lobbies, airport gates, where you already have the attention of your consumer and who you're trying to attract, and you're really trying to disseminate a lot of important information for what they're providing. And so with the Red Oak, you are able to provide 1 to 2 screens of control at 1080p resolution. So you're still able to get those vibrant graphics on your cafe menus to show and entice your customers on the top food items that you want to be displaying. And of course, with the ability to update remotely, have your seasonal promotions for each of your different food items within your cafe. In the situation where you're trying to go for a more enhanced visual aesthetic, we have the Post Oak, which is a little bit more powerful of a system. It features the AMD Ryzen V1605B with Radeon Vega 8 graphics, and the Vega 8 graphics really brings in the 4K resolution and enables more complex solutions. So the Post Oak can implement 3 4K displays, which then, as Mike was touching on, creating different aesthetics within your screens to create a visual appealing actually display of your displays, really helps with the coordination of that more powerful processor and being able to control up to those 3 screens. One of the great features of the Oak Long Life Minis is actually where the long life nomenclature comes from, and it's the fact that both of these mini computers are available within the market space for 7 years. And so this is a really important aspect because most mini computers typically only last in the market for about 3 years. And so having that additional 4 years of secure supply chain that's guaranteed is really important. So that way you can maximize the amount of benefit you get from your initial development of your digital signage. So once you develop it, you have the confidence that you will be able to continue rolling out your digital signage solutions for years to come. Next slide, please, Mike. The other,
sorry,
too many. Perfect, thank you. One of the great, there you go, perfect. One of the great feature aspects of the Oak Long Life Minis is that they are tested for 24/7 operation. So in a lot of situations, using hotel lobbies as an example, you could have or airports even, you could have customers going through at any time of the day, really, whether it be the middle of the night, they're checking in from a late flight, or they have a red eye that they're connecting to their next flight. And so it's really important from the aspect of always maintaining your message and having the correct display up, that your hardware solution is ensured that it will be able to run for 24/7 of the life of your digital signage. And so that's a really big benefit that the Oak Long Life Minis bring to the table when selecting your ideal hardware solution for your digital signage. Another great aspect is that they're both SoC, meaning system on chips, which means that the graphics are integrated natively into the main processor. And so this enables a lower total power consumption for your digital signage, which is important from a cost-effective implementation of your digital signage. So the Red Oak consumes less than 20 watts and the Post Oak consumes less than 40 watts. And so this is really key in terms of creating your cost-effective solution to ensure that you're not breaking your bank while having your great marketing in your digital signage. One of the next really important features that comes from a value add because of our combination of a solution between Mvix and SimplyNUC is our secure remote management and also secure boot. A feature built in to the embedded processors natively is the encrypted processors, so in the encrypted memory, and secure boot. So this is really important in terms of if you turn off your system, you turn it back on, say, you power down your store for the night and turn it back on, we will ensure that it loads the correct display and is able to launch the Mvix software platform and digital signage automatically without you having to do anything. So this is a really big advantage in that aspect of having a very low maintenance, low touch solution, as well as if you're in environments where you might have random blackouts from your power provider. So a great example I'd like to use, because I'm from Northern California originally, is when PG&E would shut off your power because of severe weather conditions, whether it be wind, wildfires, etc. And so you can have the confidence that once your system does come back online, that you're able to have the correct messaging within your digital signage. Beyond just the secure boot processes to make sure you have your signage up and running from the start, it also meets the TPM 2.0 authentication or certification, which ensures the correct authentication when connecting to networks. So this is a really, really big advantage and really enables and empowers the remote fleet management of the Mvix solution, where you can connect to maybe one unit or your entire fleet of units and push updates of your digital signage remotely. And without that TPM 2.0 specification and certification that ensures that authentication, it really protects your system to ensure that your message is what you want and not what someone else hacked into. And that is an unfortunate reality of us going into a digital world, is that there are more people trying to take advantage of it. And so you can rest assured that with the solution between Mvix and SimplyNUC, that you have a secure network that you can connect to and reliably push your updates. Go ahead, Mike. For the base configuration for the Red Oak and Post Oak, we do implement 4 gigabytes of RAM and 28 gigabytes of storage. And so this is what we feel provides a very powerful, robust solution for digital signage. And we also enable custom OS images. So if there are anything beyond, or any features beyond the Mvix software that you want to have on the processor and natively on the system, we can discuss what we're able to do to create that custom solution, because at SimplyNUC, we really pride ourselves on our ability to create adaptive products specific and tailored to our customers' needs. And with that, a partnership between Mvix, who has extremely powerful software solution for fleet management and pushing remote content to your devices, and our endpoint devices, which enable that secure connection and reliability of a robust digital signage, we have the perfect solution for you. And with that, we're going to open up to Q&A. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, John. That was insightful. Appreciate the walkthrough. Looks like we have some good questions coming in here, so bear with me for just a moment to sort through here. So it sounds like from a technical perspective, everyone was able to see today. Again, if you have any questions on today's webinar, want a recorded copy, please feel free to reach out to the team after the fact. First question we have from one of our audience members today is, how many units can one box run? I'm interpreting that question to ask how many displays can be powered by one media player. Typically with the SimplyNUC Mvix partnership, we look to do one media player per display. There are some potential exceptions to that depending on the circumstance, but the goal with running one display per media player is several-fold. The first is we want you to have the ability to change content across displays when needed, and so obviously having a dedicated player allows you to change unique content per unique display. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect of that is from a troubleshooting perspective, and we have some technical white papers on system uptime and things like that, which are it's much more advantageous setup technically to have one media player per display. So FYI there, and feel free to visit the Mvix or SimplyNUC knowledge base pages if you have any further questions on that. Next question we have is there a maximum number of displays? No, is the short answer. So the Mvix solution has been deployed on systems where it's 5 to 10 screens all the way up to a couple thousand screens, and same for SimplyNUC hardware. You can power as many displays as you want. You can have content that is shared across these displays. You can have content that's unique to each display. You can mix and match across the rollout. So totally up to you, but no, there's no maximum cap on displays or upper limit or anything like that. From another audience member, we have, does your software support customer billing? As a rule, what you'll find in the digital signage CMS space is that customer billing, charging customers, things like that is not typically hosted by the CMS. It's going to be more hosted by third-party web pages and third-party billing platforms. So to give an example, we have a lot of bank branches we work with where there's the desire to capture customer info at a kiosk, maybe complete some transactions at the kiosk. That's no problem, but those types of workflows are not typically handled by a CMS provider like Mvix. That's usually something you would build into your website or your web portal for capturing customer info and capturing customer payments. So it can be done, but again, it's usually done in a third-party capacity through a portal like ours. So the next question we have from our audience is, what display connection does each unit have? Typically, we work through HDMI. There's some exceptions to that rule depending on the rollout as well, but usually HDMI is the best connection. You're going to be able to get, minimum of 1080 standard HD content up to 4K. So HDMI is what we want. There's also a benefit to using HDMI over DisplayPort in some instances, for instance, display-to-player communication and status reporting and things like that. So as a rule, it's going to be HDMI from the media player to the display. All right, so it looks like we have one more question coming in here. Can screens be used outside? So the short answer is yes. There are a variety of manufacturers which make outdoor LED LCD displays and outdoor direct view LED displays. So from the Mvix perspective, absolutely. We know that the SimplyNUC players, being as powerful as they are, they can power almost any screen you can think of with an HDMI connection reliably. However, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but a SimplyNUC device is going to be typically engineered for an indoor-based environment. So if you're running an outdoor display, you'll likely want to do one of two things. You'll want to either place the media player itself indoors and run your HDMI cabling or otherwise out to the screen, or if you have your display in an outdoor rated enclosure, you can, in many instances, place the SimplyNUC media player in the outdoor rated enclosure. A couple things about that to consider are obviously it needs to be vented if you're in a warm climate area. You also want to see active HVAC in outdoor enclosures, meaning active heating and cooling. Because again, the SimplyNUC devices, as awesome as they are designed for an indoor environment with a normal indoor operating range of temperature, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure that your outdoor enclosure has that type of capability. Does the software come preloaded on the SimplyNUC players? Absolutely, that we can achieve that for you. So you can obviously purchase SimplyNUC on your own and install Mvix after the fact if you would like. But for most customers, it is a preloaded situation where ships to site, ready to go, just need to get it online and you are ready to rock and roll. And then another question from the audience is, what rates can we expect when loading new content? What data rates? So John, it looks like this is directed at you. I can also jump in from a CMS perspective if you want.
Perfect, yeah, my pleasure. So we do implement gigabit type data rates. So we do have the Wi-Fi 802.11 AC, which goes into the gigabit range for connectivity and your download uploads. And the second type of connection that we enable is Ethernet, which is also over a gigabit of data rate speed. So we do make sure you have very fast connections to enable a streamlined implementation of your updates.
Thanks for that, John. I'll add something quick to that from the Mvix side of the table. The firmware that runs on the SimplyNUC players is designed to download content where possible to the player and play it back repeatedly. Now, there's some exceptions there. For instance, if you're playing YouTube content or some other web-based streaming video protocol, then yes, that will stream. But where possible, the goal here is to have the content play back from the SimplyNUC player. That way you're minimizing streaming, you're minimizing latency issues due to network or anything like that. So where possible, that's the goal, and it usually helps increase playback quality overall. Next question from the audience is, does your software indicate if the screen is down or offline for any technical reason? So the shortest answer is yes. In the Mvix CMS, you have a variety of tools available to you to see if a media player is online or offline or if it's lost power. In some cases, you can check in on display functionality, but for the most part, you're going to be tracking the media player health. So our CMS has a full reporting suite in regards to media player health and functionality. So you can track things like network connection and speed over time, up and down speed. You can track RAM utilization, CPU utilization. In some cases, core temperature, CPU temperature. So variety of tools built in which can help you as a user monitor your media players and monitor uptime as well. We also offer proactive email notifications. So if you have screens in your deployment that are more high profile or perhaps more mission critical, you as a user can be notified automatically if the screen loses power or loses internet. So those types of tools are there too, especially if you're engaging more with the tool and need a more interactive experience. I think, John, this next question is for you. So what are the main differences between the graphics capabilities of the units you mentioned earlier?
Definitely. So a lot of it has to do with the actual resolution and the complexity of the screens that you're able to provide. So the Red Oak provides 1080p resolution and operates at 1 gigahertz processing speed and has a maximum of 2 screens that it's able to power simultaneously. The Post Oak is slightly more powerful at 1.1 gigahertz of processing speed and enables up to 3 4K displays simultaneously. So you get the full range of applications like we discussed before, whether you're looking for a more simplified, cost-effective with the Red Oak or the more visually enhanced with the Post Oak.
Thanks, John, for that clarity. It looks like I missed a question here from an audience member, so apologies for that. The question is, we have businesses across a state. Can I connect them all and manage it 100% from a single corporate office? Absolutely. That's exactly how this technology is designed, is that you can manage your media players and your screen content remotely. With that, you can mix and match the content across those players. You can have the same content. You can change it up pretty much how you want. But yes, that's the goal, is remotely from your office or even from home, you can log in and manage the content on those remote locations. At Mvix, we have clients in over 29 countries. So some of our clients wind up managing screen content across country lines, continent lines even. So, within a state is not a problem. That's exactly how this type of system is designed. So next question looks like it's for you, John. Does your media player overheat if there is no air conditioner, such as a warehouse or in a petrol station environment?
No, so both of the Oak Long Life Minis have active cooling built into them. So if they do start getting hot from the processing, they will create their own cooling conditioning to make sure that they don't overheat. So you can ensure that your digital signage always stays up.
Awesome. Awesome. Very good. Give me 1 second here. I'm just scrolling through some of the questions to see what we have, see if we have any others. All right, looks like that's pretty much where we're at for questions today from the audience. So again, folks, I want to thank everyone for their time today. Thank you, John, as well for jumping on. If you have any questions, you have John's contact info here, as well as my own. Please feel free to reach out to either team. Both teams have a large group of consultants that we can help you out with your project, whether it's hardware questions, software questions, or content questions, whatever the case is. So please feel free to reach out to either the SimplyNUC or Mvix team, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again for your time, folks, and have a great rest of the day.